Hello there, my name is Kim, and these are the Wayrire Chronicles, my alternative look at current affairs. Hi there, everybody. Today I want to talk about immigration, a hot button subject, as they call it in most media. It's an interesting subject. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Currently, world demographics projections showing every advanced economy going into what is being called a mass decline in the birth rate, with, surprisingly enough, countries like China being the worst off. Without getting into a lot of statistical complications, it's simplistically that currently modern couples don't produce enough kids. There's no real way around that, because we have moved from a demographic, whereby, let's say 100 years ago, it was normal. Let's take my example. My family, my mother's family, so a family that started producing children back in the late 1920s, had 11 children. This was not unusual. Go back 100 years from there. In my mother's case, 11 children survived. 100 years earlier, probably 3 or 4 of them will survive. Mortality rate was extremely high because of lack of progress in medicine, hygiene, and all the rest of it. What we've arrived at today is a situation whereby everybody's got a lot richer, a lot healthier, and they don't want to have kids. For a couple to have more than 3 children is highly unusual. A lot of couples will opt for 1, 2. This means that the replacement rate starts to drop off. So is this important? Do we need all these people? Well, yes, we do, because the number of people in a country contribute to the economy. And at the same time, the younger people coming onto the workforce produce, that's the most productive from an economic point of view, part of their lives, from after university up to 30, 40, up to 50. If we had less of them, then the elder generations, which quite frankly 200 years ago didn't exist, since most people didn't get much beyond 60, now you have a huge bulge, as they call it, of elderly people, rather like myself, who are way into their late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And these people produce, because they're no longer working, we have retired factor, and society is geared to these people not to work any longer. It's just the way it is at the moment. So all these lesser young people have to fund the costs of the elderly people, because not everybody has saved up. Currently, there's talk, or you can go on the internet. It's very easy. Can you retire on $1 million in America? With great difficulty. Okay? Let's face it. Your average Joe Blow, or average Mr. Average, is not going to arrive at retirement age with $1 million. The upper elite will have much more than that. But the vast majority of people, they don't. So they rely on something called pension funds or government pension funds. And those pension funds are funded by the younger people coming in. That is slowly changing, but not changing fast enough. What does it mean for the economy as a whole? That actually the lesser number of producers, of economic producers, means that the economy starts to shrink. Don't have enough people to pay for all these elderly people and for everything else. So actually, you need immigration. And everybody will turn around and go, oh my God, we don't want immigrants, because let's face it, for most people, immigrants are a different color, a different race, different religious beliefs, and don't speak your language. So you have this huge immigration integration problem. Happens in every single country. I would like to look at a situation, and most economists, sorry, before we get into that, most economists will say that we actually need more immigrants into most countries to enable that economy to continue to grow. Okay, we can look at from a green perspective that we don't need to grow and we should all shrink and go down to we don't need all this extra money. We can all live at a much lower level. No, don't work that way. Humans do not accept the level of existence they've arrived at. They will go down to a lower level. My favorite analog for that is 150 years ago, owning a horse was the equivalent of a millionaire's possession. It's like owning a Ferrari today. Most people walked. That's why most people stayed in the village they were born in or the town they were born in and didn't go anywhere else. You hear about holidays and all the rest of it. Nobody really traveled around. Talking about your average person, not your wandering super rich, which would be the upper class. Try and tell people today that actually you can't have a car and to go shopping, you got to walk. Most people go, no way. I'm not walking everywhere. How do I carry all those bags? And what about the kids? And I have to go and buy a new table from somewhere. How can I get it home? Etc. Etc. Most people have no interest in going back to walking everywhere. People won't go back in time. That's not the human nature. So we arrive at a stage where we need the economies to grow up, and we need a situation where to enable these economies to grow, we need more productive people. One way around it, as economies rather like Australia and other countries. Take Australia because I've lived there. They have a pretty aggressive immigration policy. It's not without its problems, but they tend to manage it in a way that there are people coming into the country all the time. There's a certain level of immigration. Okay, it's much easier there. It's an island. It's easier to stop undesirables coming in. So you only want a certain class, or not even a class. You want a certain level of intellect of immigrant. So you've got a skill set that is missing, and you want that type of immigrant. You don't want laborers, although even there's a problem with laborers. Agricultural production is dependent on, in a certain extent, islanders, laborers, and foreign students to work in the fields. It's always a big problem, labor. So what happens? In America, one of the overriding three themes of the new administration, got to close those borders. We don't want any more people coming in, which when you think about it is extremely ironic since the whole country was founded on immigrants. And there's been cycles and cycles of immigrants coming in who hated the new immigrants who came in after them. Was that the original immigrants who didn't like the Irish coming in, who didn't like the subsequent Eastern Europeans, etc., etc. So this is a natural thing. There's another side to this immigration. Because if we go back to, let's say, before between the two world wars and earlier than that, when immigration was at its height into America, it was completely different. The country was in need of immigrants. It was set up that way. Now we have a situation whereby, frankly, we have a similar situation in Europe. We do not need, or they do not want, and find it very difficult to assimilate hundreds and thousands of unskilled immigrants. Whereas, let's say, 100 years ago, as an unskilled laborer, you could go to America and find a job and start digging ditches or the equivalent of, or working in the kitchen, etc., etc. Nowadays, people, big exceptions, agriculture and the normal manual laboring jobs in America, they don't want those type of people because inevitably those people are low educated and don't look right. Also, a lot of these people have run away from situations in their home countries, Latin America, Africa, Caribbean, Asia, or Middle East, which are, I wouldn't say traumatic, they're extremely traumatic. So a lot of these people arrive with baggage, mental issues, because I give the example in the 90s here in Europe, or the end of the 80s, the 90s, when the Berlin Wall came down and the ex-Yugoslavia collapsed into civil war. Where I'm living in southern Switzerland, we had a huge influx of ex-Yugoslav refugees, of ethnic groups that we had frankly never heard of before. Bosnians and Croatians and Serbians and Bosnian Muslims and Christians. You even know there were Bosnian Muslims and Christians and Orthodox, etc., etc. All these people suddenly were refugees, and they came in, and we had no idea who these people were. A. Two, their children were traumatized. They'd just escaped from a horrible civil war where everybody was being murdered and slaughtered, and it was extremely dramatic. So we had children with behavioral issues because they had seen things that children should not see, for want of a better word. So this creates a tension with these immigrants who are arriving in the country. Even though they would like to assimilate, they have baggage, and it's difficult. In America, it will be the same. Anybody who's followed the way that immigrants go through, I forget the name of that horrible jungle gap before at the bottom of the isthmus of from Colombia into Mexico, you don't really want to do that. And if you're a young kid doing that and you arrive in America, you've got these nightmares, and that'll affect your behavior once you arrive there, assuming that you will get there, et cetera, et cetera. The point I would like to pick up on is something that I picked up on in previous videos. Is the issue is that if people are living in their country and their country is prosperous, they don't want to leave. Why would you want to leave? Why would you want to leave the place you were born in, your roots are in, your mother and father are from, your great parent, your whole social structure is from there. You speak their own language, you know the why would you want to go and run away and go to America? And en masse, you have one adventurous person who go, I want to go and travel around the world. But hey, the way we look about traveling around the world is completely different from that. The way we look about traveling around the world as prosperous, advanced economy people is what? It's, the guy's doing his gap year before he went to university. So he's going off on his European tour, talking about the American guy. And, wait a minute. Dad, I'm calling you from Rome. I run out of money. What am I going to do? Okay, what's the account number? I'll send you some more. That type of person is not that type of person leading from West Africa, South America, Afghanistan, even China. That type of person has nothing, doesn't expect to have anybody who's going to back him up because it's not going to happen. And when he gets there, he's got to work like a slave to try and even get his head above the parapet of, eating and somewhere to sleep. The current administration of let's close the border because all the drug people are coming in and the guys are murdering and all the rest of it is BS. That is not the issue. That is not going to stop it. What is going to stop it is if proper policies are put in place in the countries where these people have run away from. Now, let's take, because I'm from Africa, let's take countries in West Africa. Corruption abounds. I put this up before. The way the current ruling elites in a lot of African and South American and Asian countries operate is that the equivalent of tech trillionaires, billionaires, right? They steal all the money. By hook or by crook, they will take the money from that country and keep it in their pocket. So they have a huge lifestyle. I mean, I would like to see a statistic, the equivalent of a government bureaucrat who's amassed a fortune, or a government president or vice president or head of army in some African country, the proportion of money he has compared to the young person who's got on a leaky boat and paddled his way across the Mediterranean to try and get into Italy to try and get money or try and get a job and escape from this hellhole he's living in. That proportional difference between a tech billionaire in America and your average worker in America, I'm sure, is vastly bigger. I called it those people, those dictators, those presidents, those army chiefs, those rulers of those countries, they steal the future generation's money. They steal their future. They steal that young man's future who had to get, because he has no future. And the only way for him to have a future is to get on that leaky boat and try and get to Europe or to trudge his way through the terrible jungle to up the spine of Central America to try and get to America, to get into America, to earn money, but given the choice, he wouldn't do it. Why would he do it? If his country was prosperous and everything was working well, he would stay put. The main point about immigration is that we have, I believe, advanced economies have a obligation to ensure or to work towards ensuring that those countries become what the potential they have to expand and produce and at the same time keep their masses gainfully employed is huge. It's massive. Africa's got the fastest growing population in the world. They, at some stage, let off the leash. They will become extremely important. But if we don't ensure that those, let's face it, those, can't call them anything else but assholes who run those countries, those greedy, grabbing, whatever, dictators, if they continue to do it, well, what happens? Look at South Sudan. It's all about money. Got men, never argue with the man with the gun. Being brought up in Africa is one of the things you learn. Never argue with the man with the gun, for obvious reasons. And the young person living there has exactly the same attitude. Don't argue with the man with the gun because what happens? Get thrown in jail or shot, and that's the end of it. That should not happen. And we should not continue. We have to stop this continuous accommodation of countries that allow their citizens. I mean, seriously, how is it possible that a like hellhole like North Korea still exists? How does that still be possible? Or I don't know. Name any number of them. Venezuela, Cuba. Suddenly, at the end of the Biden administration, they said, "Oh, we're taking it off the most whatever it is, the bad nation list." I'm sure we done ages ago. The place is a mess. There is hope. Amiel from Argentina seems to be trying to do something to pull that country out of its hole. Who knows? That is an immigration story, and quite frankly, one of my main bugbears is banning things, and stopping them at the border is effectively a ban. Never works. You need to get creative with your solutions. Like you need to look at things from a point of view that helps everybody move forward to arrive at a situation where they don't need to leave the country. In fact, we would arrive at a situation where actually the advanced economies need to put in place, will eventually need to put in place incentives to entice the best of those countries to move to your advanced economy to keep things ticking over. Who knows? See you guys.